Alright, there's like no storage and no battery life on this phone anymore, so let's try to make this quick. I wanted to talk about one of my favorite subject matters, the free will versus determinism conversation. Obviously one reason why this comes up so much for me is, I don't know if it's obvious, obvious for people who know me well. It's the struggle with choices, indecision, regret, and all that stuff. But recently there's a book that came out by I'm not sure how you say it, Sapolsky, I think, called Determined, and I was thinking about reading that book, but there were some things that I read about it that kind of turned me off, so instead I bought this book. It should arrive tomorrow, called Debunking Determinism by David Lawrence, and so I'll have more thoughts that I might share on here after I read that book. But I watched a couple interviews with him, and one point that he made that resonated, that I kind of wanted to share, maybe in my own words or whatever, is it's the idea that the philosophy self-contradicts in the same way that if you said there is no such thing as truth, you're making a truth statement. Like if nothing's objectively true, that would include the statement nothing's objectively true, which then makes that a subjective statement to begin with. And that the same thing kind of applies to determinism in a sense, because the determinist believes that he is essentially a robot, that he was always going to be a determinist and he was always going to come to that conclusion. And if that's the case, then how do you trust your own reason, logic, and so on, as opposed to any of the other computers? Of course, there seems to be this inherent bias that some people might say, oh, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, whatever. But most people, especially if they're engaging in philosophical discourse, have some trust in their own thinking abilities, and they think that their opinions are real and valid, even if they disagree completely with someone else. But the point is though, if we're all just these robots, that we're always going to come to these conclusions and always we're going to have these opinions, then doesn't that call into question your own ability to reason? Or you might say, oh, I'm just examining the evidence. A computer can examine it, but how do you know which computer has the mind virus or whatever, or the virus, right? How do you know which there's different computers that output all sorts of things, right? A computer could be designed to say that 4 plus 4, see, this computer malfunctioning, 4 plus 4 equals 7 or whatever. And so determinism in a sense contradicts in that if we're all just these mechanistic robots, how do you trust that your own conclusion that we are just these mechanistic robots? And I also think that there's something more to be said about the intuition that we have free will. Just the idea that to be a robot who's aware that they're a robot, to have the desire to not be a robot, to want something better than reality, right? Even just to have that imagination that we create through art, through music, through poetry and paintings, and so on, that we're like trying to transform this current reality full of suffering and often full of ugliness. Not that there's not beauty. I mean, I do appreciate, I think trees are beautiful and so on, but just the fact that we have this desire to create a more beautiful world, there's something special there. And I think sometimes people that want to have a very scientific, provable worldview, there's something to be said for that worldview when it comes to people can then take the fact that there's mystery in the world, there's beauty, there's these things about human desire and creativity that seem unique, fascinating, special, and a lot of people then want to take that magic and they want to put it into a box, right? They want to put it into the box of some sort of maybe trite, what I would see as like some trite spiritual messaging that might not fully resonate or seems phony, or religion or whatever. And I'm not saying, look, to each their own. I think I have certain religious traditions that I like, and there's certain religious traditions that I don't like, and certain parts of the Bible or the Torah or any religious book that I probably might find interesting or profound, and other parts that I find dull and relatively useless. But I think this is where problems often come in, not just in the conversation of determinism or philosophy or theism versus atheism and so on. And I've made this point many times, but there's often this desire to pull in opposite directions, that, there's this, it seems that almost all sides of politics, religion, debate, and so on, they don't like that gray, right? They don't like that gray, and whether or not that's, wanting to be able to feel comfortable in a world where humans want to be able to predict things, right? You want to be able to predict outcomes for safety reasons, security and comfort, and so on. That makes sense. That makes sense that people have these desires, but I wouldn't be the first person to say that I think beauty and some sort of spirituality and something deeper than what seems to be kind of hard scientific truths exists in the gray areas, in the mystery, in the unknown. And it can be discomforting. It can sometimes, when you're in the wrong mood, lead to, bouts with nihilism and so on, right? Because you don't feel like you have those concrete answers that people can tell you, that agree with you, that you can rely on. No, don't worry, the truth is this. There's discomfort sometimes in the mystery, but it also can be beautiful. And for me personally, I think that's where romantic love actually lies, is in that mystery. Personally, I would like to one day connect with someone who sees the world sort of in a similar way, and the unknown, the fascinating things, the pleasure, the suffering, everything in between, kind of deepens that bond with someone. Two people lost in space and so on. There she is.